No plan will ever be. Will it be endorsed unanimously? Will everybody agree? No, that's not possible either in this system. But it is a plan that is based on the best advice of our own independent experts and in many cases years of consultation with the public. This plan is about helping people move around the city quickly. It's about helping them move around the city efficiently. It's about connecting them to jobs and opportunity. In many cases, people just don't have the same access to jobs and opportunity through public transportation that they need. And it's about, I think, taking Toronto from a good city to a great city. This is an essential element to move us that next step forward. It is about creating jobs and opportunity in every single corner of the city. We can't afford any longer to just assume that we have unending amounts of room and capacity to create every single job downtown, nor should that be the case even if we did have all of the room. We seem to love to fight about transit in this city. Whose plan is better? Who's right? Who's wrong? I'm standing here today to tell you that we must bring an end to this fighting and this bickering. And as mayor, I'm determined to get on with building, and I want my colleagues on the executive committee and council to commit to the same thing, building transit. We've had enough debates of transit over the years, and we now have the opportunity with a very ambitious network plan that goes across the city to approve something that will keep us busy building continuously, as opposed to what we've done in the past, which is to stop and to start and to change and to re-debate. And so I say let's get on with building transit because we simply can't afford to wait any longer. Your questions?
Tory, the Metrolink board was meeting earlier today. One of the things they talked about was fare integration. Now, do you see the current system continuing to work in the future where I pay one fare for Mississauga Transit, another fare for GO, another fare for TTC, or do you see a more integrated way of paying for transit?
There simply has to be a more integrated way to have people pay their fares. There are two situations that exist at the moment that affect people in the City of Toronto, and my job is to worry about them first and foremost, that we have to take a very hard second look at. The first, and I think the most glaring, is the fact that people who travel shorter distances on the GO Rail network are paying very substantially more on a per kilometre basis than people who travel from elsewhere. So if you travel from Exhibition Place to the Union Station, which is the kind of use of those rails we want people to make more of in the future, you are paying 3 or 4 times as much as somebody who's traveling from much further away. And you have to ask yourself the question, if you're riding on the same train, on the same rails, and so on, why would you pay so much more to go a much shorter distance? The second issue is the issue of the actual fare integration itself. As you may know, some of the other municipalities surrounding Toronto have arrangements that are considerably better than even the ones we've tried here that act as an incentive for people to move back and forth between the two systems. And as we move to implement Smart Track and Regional Express Rail together with the TTC, we want people to be able to move back and forth and use both systems as a means of getting around, because that's the objective at the end of the day, isn't it? It's the objective is to help people get around the city. And the more roadblocks you throw in their way, the more likely they are to decide either to just keep using their car or something else that's not going to contribute to the city being better off.
Mayor Tory, some councillors were upset by the tone of your op-ed yesterday. The suggestion that some of them don't care about what's happening in Scarborough, which is home to many immigrants and many different immigrant groups. Does that help when you're talking about trying to come together, not argue, and really sort of have
Well, let me deal with that in 2 parts. First of all, the part that has to do with the suggestions that have been made about words that I put forward to the Star dealing with immigrants. I believe that those words on any fair reading were completely mischaracterized. I believe that most of the mischaracterization was confined to one councillor who I think went way over the top in mischaracterizing my words, and himself creating a great division and using adjectives and various other descriptors that I find to be completely unacceptable in the context of this City Hall. I've tried my very best to be somebody who on every occasion tries to bring people together and search for the kind of consensus you need to get things done around here. And I will continue to do that, and there will be no exceptions to that. With respect to others who did comment on the fact that I might have been suggesting people don't understand the depths of the isolation that I think we've seen to some extent in Scarborough because of a lack of transit and a lack of investment there, I would only say this. I am perhaps more acutely aware of that lack of investment and the lack of job opportunities and the lack of transit, and they're all tied together, the lack of any office building being built there in 25 years, years because I sought this office within the past year or so, and because I spent a lot of time there. And I will just say that I think it is a very serious matter in the context of this city that one part of the city has not experienced the kind of growth and development that other parts of the city have. And they're not all by themselves, but I think they have been very stagnant, and we have to reverse that. We have to reverse that so that they have equitable access to opportunity and jobs, so that they can get around more easily, so that students can get to school more easily. I'm standing here, and I have been talking throughout this piece about the people who take 2 or 3 buses and have a 2-hour commute each way every day to get where they're going. That is not going to stand as an incentive either for them to be employed or go to school, where they might want to go to school or be employed, nor is it going to be an incentive for people to invest in Scarborough. I am trying with a Scarborough Transit Plan that, as Jennifer Keesmaat said, actually hangs together as a plan to fix that, and to fix it in my lifetime. Because our record at fixing anything within any reasonable period of time has been very poor in the city. We make decisions, and we reverse them, and then we debate them again, and then we amend them, and then we modify them, we approve them in elections, and then ignore what the people said. I don't want to continue that way. We can't continue that way if we're going to build a great city. I still hear about this as the #1 issue that people name, which is getting around this city. And I understand that there are going to be people who are going to be opposed to the Bloor Danforth subway extension to Scarborough. I happen to differ with them. But this notion that the point of view that I represent, by the way, given a mandate by the people to represent it, that it lacks completely in legitimacy, I don't accept. And I find it passing strange that people have to sort of say that my point of view, a point of view shared by hundreds of thousands of people, and endorsed through 3 or 4 different elections, that somehow that completely lacks legitimacy.
Mayor Tory, there's a group on council that says that if you built the 7-stop LRT, you could afford to build so much more transit to all of those people that you're speaking about in Scarborough. You've suggested that 7-stop LRT is no longer feasible. Can you explain what specifically you believe is not feasible about the LRT?
What I have said, and I'll repeat it again today, is that this notion that we can just flip a switch and sort of go back to the LRT, the so-called good old days of the LRT that people seem to think, these nostalgic notions they have, are not going to be on. All 3 governments have said they support the construction of a subway extension of the Bloor Danforth line. We've had elections on it, we've had council decisions on it, we've changed our minds on it before, and the notion that we're just going to go back and everything's going to pick up where it left off, I mean, that's going to have to be repriced. There are various other engineering and technical considerations, thanks to the fact that we have things like Smart Track in the mix now. So my belief is that if we try to go back to anything or any other plan other than the one that we've put forward that combines an LRT serving priority neighborhoods and an express subway connection to the Scarborough Civic Centre, supported by planning evidence of our expert planners, if we decide we're somehow going to, that the people are going to somehow substitute their judgment for that optimized plan, we will be years before we do anything. And I think that is going to deny the people of Scarborough the opportunity to get around better in a way that is open to people in other parts of the city. It will deny them equitable access to opportunity and jobs, and I think that's very unfair, given that our obligation and my mission is to bring the city together and make it one city where people have equitable opportunity, where they have equitable access to public transportation, and I think this plan that we're putting forward will do that.
But how are you going to pay for the LRT? Can you just explain what the specific problems are? Because both Metrolinx and TTCs say that there's nothing, as far as RER and Smart Track go, that preclude the LRT to replace the SRT.
I noticed in all of those comments that Mr. McQuaig made this morning, which I think, again, that you have oversimplified, I say respectfully, but I noticed in all those comments, he repeatedly said that all 3 governments have endorsed the subway extension of the Bloor Danforth subway line to Scarborough. And I don't know how much more democratic it can get. We will have another vote here at the City Council, and that's fine. I'm obviously prepared to abide by the results, and I'm looking forward to having one more debate if that's what we have to do. But I am saying that it can't get much more democratic than to have, at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels, to have elections on which the subject of the Scarborough extension of the Bloor Danforth subway line has been explicitly on the table, with people taking the 2 different points of view, for and against it, and every single time the candidates who were elected who supported the subway. What more mandate do we need than that? And now we have to get on with it, and I predict to you with certainty I'll be a very old man by the time this date arises. I'll be 87 years old if I'm lucky enough to live that long, that people will not be sitting around in 25 years debating the wisdom of this subway extension. They'll be saying, thank goodness they extended it, because by then they'll have talked about extending it to somewhere else that very same subway, and they most certainly will not be debating the price because they understand the fact that you have to pay to build transit, and that transit is never cheap and it's never free. And those are realities that I'm being honest with people about. I was honest when I ran in the election on what I supported. I am carrying through with what I said. There have been some obvious modifications to the price on that, which are really due to the fact that inadequate planning was done before I got here, but you live with what you have, and we're going to proceed ahead and get transit built. That is what I think people want in this city. Get transit built, stop being world champion debaters and start being world champion builders. And I want, at the end of my period in office, whenever that is, I want people to be able to say he got things done, and he was straight up about it, and he was honest about it, and he got some things done.
Mr. Miller, is this a legacy issue for you?
Not at all. No, look, I'll put it this way. It's a legacy issue for the city, because I think if we decide we are going to sort of leave isolated an area of the city that is presently, by everybody's admission, inadequately served by public transportation, and we go another 5 or 7 years where we just say, oh, well, we'll have a few more debates and maybe look at going back to a position we had 3 times ago, I think that no one will thank us for that, least of all the people who are in the 3-bus transit commute every day, the 2-hour each-way transit commute, who have a difficulty getting to a job. We can't attract as much investment out there as Scarborough deserves. It's a great place to invest. I'm enthusiastic about attracting investment personally and going to people and saying, you should build a building out there or build a plant out there. But we will not be able to go and effectively make that case until we have proper public transportation. And the express subway, Smart Track, and the LRT are all a huge part of making that happen. And I am putting this forward as a plan, not any one part of it, a plan. The express subway connection to connect the Civic Centre, the LRT that's going to serve a lot of neighborhoods and the very busy U of T Scarborough campus, and Smart Track, which is going to provide service to the north part of Scarborough and up to the jobs in Markham. All 3 are necessary as a result of decades of underinvestment in Scarborough, where the people there have been shortchanged as a result of decisions that have been made over time.
Your friend, this is an issue of equity for the disadvantaged residents of Scarborough who are underserved by
For
transit.
all residents of Scarborough.
But so the city's own numbers show, though, that the one-stop subway extension would serve only 1,700 new residents of neighborhood improvement areas. The 17-stop LRT would serve about 25,000, but we are now not quite sure how we're going to pay for that with the increased cost. The original LRT plan, the 7-stop, would have served 3 neighborhood improvement areas, and the subway would serve only 1. So can you explain why you think the subway is the best way to serve underserved
I believe
residents?
that the package of transit initiatives that are being presented here, and it's being presented again as a package, Smart Track that serves many neighborhoods in Scarborough from the north down and connects it to the job hub in Markham and to downtown, the LRT, which connects a number of priority neighborhoods and the U of T Scarborough campus and is subject to being extended at a later time in a second phase, and the Scarborough Express subway that connects the city centre, the civic centre of Scarborough, to the rest of the city and to the current rapid transit line on Bloor Danforth, that those 3 taken together represent a significant investment, yes, but also a significant opportunity to do the most for people. And the notion that was expressed this morning that there is no money available to build the LRT is not true. We've got a very substantial down payment available even after the increased cost of the Scarborough subway, and I intend to go out and find the rest of that money and get it done, because we cannot let these discussions, as we have so often in the past, we always found some reason not to build. We found a reason not to build, and now I'm trying to find ways to get to yes, and that's what this afternoon's about and this morning, and that's what we're going to be about over the next few weeks and the next few months, because we are going to get this transit built. I don't think you should underestimate my determination, and that there's a lot of support out there for this, and those who are opposed, I'm totally respectful of their right to be opposed and of their right to carry on a campaign as long as they want. But we're going to get to decision time fairly soon, and then the decision will be made, and we'll get ahead and I think do some great things for the City of Toronto.
Dan, on your point that 3 governments were elected to build the subway, I don't think that any government was necessarily elected to build a one-stop subway extension for $3.2 billion. Obviously, the plans have changed. You've acknowledged that the previous plan was based on faulty numbers. That was a plan that you supported. That's the plan that you were elected to build, if you follow your logic. Do you think that the people of Scarborough and the people of this city are holding you to building the subway, even though the plan has changed so substantially? Is it not capable, are you not capable of showing that leadership to change your mind if the plan doesn't still make sense?
First of all, the so-called faulty numbers that you referred to that I relied upon, I had no other numbers to rely on. These were the numbers produced by the City of Toronto. They were the only numbers that were on the table. And you know the process that led to those numbers. I had